So let's get right to it. The main module we will use today is the bass module from Autin. This module will give us the 303 sound. And I have a video about building the TB-303 in VCV Rack. Links in the description if you're interested. But today we will concentrate on the sound. So the bass module will be more than enough. We will start with a nice ambient background to get things moving. So first we need an oscillator. And I find that the even VCO from Befaco works really nicely with this module. Let's use a square wave. This will go to the oscillator input, and we can already send this to the mixer. Let's take this maybe a couple of octaves down, and now we need something to play this voice. So for now, let's use 12 key from Impromptu, which will look like this. I will use the CV output connected to the volt per octave input, and the gate output will gate this module, this bass module. Now we can play it. Something like this adds a bit more modulation. Maybe a bit less cutoff. Something like this, very nice. And what we will do now, we will use Plateau from Valley, which is a beautiful, beautiful reverb. And I will use also the complex simpler from Nischi. This is a pretty simple sampler. Now we'll send this voice first through Plateau and then to the sampler. And I will use also a copy of this voice to the mixer. I will send a copy to the mixer so we can listen to what's going on. And now we will use only the wet signal. So we will take the dry signal all the way down, add some modulation, internal modulation, and take the low frequencies a bit down. And now let's record a short line. I will hit record and will play something on the 12 key. Let it fade out a bit. Very nice, something about like 20 seconds. Now let's disconnect all of this and listen to what we recorded. Already with the reverb baked in. I will also save this sample so you can download it with the patch. Okay, now let's let it run in reverse. Here we have the speed knob, and if we take it to negative values, let's say -1, it will play in reverse. Add some send reverb to this. Take it a bit down maybe. Yes, by the way, what I have here, I have a Plateau as a send reverb. I have, of course, the mixer from MindMeld, and I have the MB module from Stürmelder that will change the module browser, as you can see here, so I can have my most used modules, the last used, the recently updated, and so on. I can have favorites. I can change the preview of the modules. So if you're interested, again, this is available in the Stürmelder collection. Okay, so we have a nice background going. Let's remove 12 key and Plateau. We don't need them now. And let's add some crunch and filter the sound a bit with Feline from Valley. This one here, it's a stereo filter that has really nice drive to it. So I will send this voice through this filter, add some drive. Maybe a bit of resonance. We can also modulate the cutoff point with a slow LFO. I will use the LFO, switch it to slow with this button here. maybe use a triangle wave and use it to modulate the cutoff point just a bit to add some movement. Very nice. Okay, let's move on to the next voice. We will try and create a nice one-shot sequence with lots of delay. So let's use the burst generator from Repelzen. This will create a burst of triggers. Now it has also a CV output that we can use for pitch. So let's use, I will move this a bit, let's use a harmonic from Instruo, the quantizer from Instruo. Let's send this, the CV output, let's send to the CV input of the harmonic and open the attenuator a bit to let some signal through. And now let's use C, E flat, F, G, and B flat. This will be our scale for today. A special scale I will never use. I never use this scale at all. First time. Okay, now I also want to change this to a minor scale. So instead of Ionian, we will use Aeolian, which is natural minor. So now we have the chords will move together according to the minor scale. Okay, and let's send this to the oscillator. The root will go to the volt per octave of the oscillator, and we'll use the gate output. So whenever there's a change in note, it will output a trigger in this case. This will go to the gate input of the bass module. Let's connect this already to the mixer. And now we can trigger the burst generator. We get nothing special because we need to change this from gate to trigger. Nice. And now let's do something like this. I will use the end of cycle output, and this output here, the end of cycle. Whenever the sample ends its cycle, it will trigger the burst generator. Already we can add some delay, so I will use the chronoblob. Send this through the chronoblob. I will change the time modulation mode, so when I change the delay times it will not glitch. Let's send this to the mixer, maybe change the delay time a bit for both channels, maybe a ping pong delay, add a nice amount of feedback. Let's wait for it. Okay, a nice amount of reverb is always nice. One more time. Okay, now let's start adding some movement. So first of all, we can change this sequence to change each time by setting the burst generator, if I zoom in a bit, to output random voltages. You can see here R plus means random plus, so it will go up in pitch randomly each and every time. And we can also use sample and hold to add some movement to everything. I will use the one from Moskva Modular. We have 8 of them. And I will trigger the common input, so it will trigger all 8 of them with the burst generator. And let's start by modulating the delay times, left and right, separately from one another, just slightly. So with each hit we will have a different delay time. Very nice. We can also change or modulate the repetition, so how many bursts we will have, how many triggers, in this burst we will have, and also the time, so how long or how short they will be, or how quick or how slow actually. And of course, let's modulate also the bass module, so we'll start with the cutoff. Let's take the cutoff a bit up and modulate it. Also the envelope modulation, I will modulate with the sample and hold. This bass module from Motin is really nice. Let's also modulate the resonance, take it a bit down maybe. And we can use the last one, the last trigger here, to trigger the accent control on the bass module. So it will randomly trigger accents, which means basically that the filter will be more open. And now a nice thing about this sample and hold that each of the rows has probability control. So we have 8 of them for each row. So we can add probability to the sample and hold if it will be triggered or not. So let's change this a bit. Again, just to add more movement so it's not so predictable, I guess. Let's listen to this a bit. So we have something nice going on, lots of movement. And now let's add an arpeggio to this. So first of all, we will use another bass module. This, as I mentioned, is our sound for today, the 303 sound, more or less, of course. And this time we'll use a different oscillator. I will use the TSL, also from Instruo. And we will mix a few of its waveforms. It has multiple waveforms we can use. We will mix them with the VCV mixer, which is super useful. So let's use the square. Let me zoom in a bit. We'll use the square output, and we can take it an octave down with this switch here, an octave or 2 octaves. In this case, I will take it an octave down. Let's use the triangle and also the pulse output and the fold output. So here we have pulse with modulation, and here we have folding, which again can add movement. And let's use the mix output and send it to the oscillator input on the bass module. And from there, of course, I will go also to the mixer. Okay, now let's do this. We will use the sequential switch from ML, the 8 to 1, so we can send up to 8 signals sequentially to one output, to one destination. And we will use it to switch between the outputs of harmonic and arpeggiate them, arpeggiate the chords harmonic is producing. So let's start with the root note. This will be step 1, then the third, then again the root, and then the 5th. 4 steps, I want 8, and so let's do this again. Let's go again, root, third, root, and in this case we will use the 7th output. So we have a 7th chord that we are arpeggiating. We are playing the notes sequentially one after the other with the help of the sequential switch. So now let's use an LFO to drive the switch. I will use again the LFO. Let's switch it to square wave, use it to drive the switch, and also to trigger or gate the bass module. And let me see. No, the LFO. Like this. A bit quicker. And then we can use the switch to change the pitch of the oscillator. Maybe a bit quicker. Something like this. Now there's a thing with the CV output of the burst module. It will always go back to 0. So it will create a random sequence and then go back to 0. So we will get always, as you can hear, we get always the same sequence, the same arpeggio over and over again. So let's do something. Let's change this, and we will use sample and hold. I will use the sample and hold from Bog Audio. I will trigger it with the burst generator, and this will be what will generate our pitch. So we will get a different arpeggio, but you can still use, I showed you this, how to use the CV output. If you want, you don't have to. It's also useful for modulation. But in this case, I want a different arpeggio each and every time. So I'm using different sample and hold. Something like this. Okay, now let's disconnect this for a second, because I don't want it to play all the time. So let's send it to a VCA so we can control its amplitude over time. And I will use an AD envelope. I will use the AD envelope from Nischi to control the VCA. Let's send this also to the mixer, and I will set a nice long attack to the envelope, and maybe also some decay, and maybe a bit less. Let's see how it sounds like. A bit less exponential or a bit more linear. And now we will use the end of cycle of the burst generator to trigger the envelope. So whenever the burst is ending, whenever the first voice is not playing anymore, then we will get this arpeggio. Let's add also a healthy amount of reverb. Something like this. Maybe take the second voice a bit down. Maybe also here we can use some delay. So I will use the chronoblob. I will sync it in this case with the LFO. Let's use again a ping pong delay, change the delay time left and right, and the menu and the global one. Again, let's add lots and lots of feedback. And now I will send the voice first to chronoblob and then to the mixer. Maybe change the delay time even more. And now what I will do here, I will take out in the right-click menu here, I can cut the low frequencies a bit. So let's go to about almost 200 Hertz. Maybe take this voice a bit down also. Okay, now let's add, what happened here? Let's add some movement. Let's add it here with Oct, also from Instruo and DivKid. 8 LFOs that are unsynced to one another. Let's take the rate down. And let's start with modulating the levels on the mixer. Now I know Oct is bipolar, but it doesn't really matter to me in this case. So I'm just going to send it to the CV inputs of the waves, of the different waves, the different inputs. And I will take the level up. Again, because it's bipolar, it will not go up all the way to this level, because it's -5 to +5. It will go just half the length. So I'm taking the overall level a bit up. You can also modulate the pulse width and the fold of the TSL, again just to add more movement. And of course also the bass module, so we can modulate the cutoff again. Let's do this a bit quicker with the cutoff, and also the envelope modulation a bit slower. Let's listen to this for a second. Very nice. Okay, now let's add a nice steady bass to connect everything. So we will use another bass module. And in this case, this time I will use a different oscillator. I will use Blick from Volt, which has multiple waves you can scan through, and also pulse width for all of the waves. So let's already add some movement with Oct to modulate the pulse width and to modulate the waves. Let's send this to the oscillator input of the bass module and already to the mixer. And now to sequence this, we will use the NoteSec 16 from JW. So let's first of all add also a clock. I will use this smaller version of clocked from Impromptu. I will use a multiplied by 2 clock and send this to the clock input of the note sequencer. And now the volt per octave output will go to the oscillator and the gate output will go to the bass module. Also here it will output, it says gates, but it will output triggers. So let's set the bass module to work with triggers. And now let's randomize the note sequencer and find, you know what, let's go with the 7-step sequence and find a nice sequence we like. Maybe take it an octave down. Something a bit more mellow I want. This is nice. Okay, so now what we are doing, what we will do is we are going to cheat. We are going to cheat. We are going to use 8-phase from Sternmelder. And this module will allow us, if you are doing it with me, to save presets of the module. So I can save a few sequences and sequence them. So first of all, we have to make sure that it will work with the note sequencer. In the right-click menu, we have module. For now it's left. I want it to work with the module on its right, the sequencer. So I click it once, and then it will work with the module on its right. And now we have 2 modes. We have read and write. I want to go to write mode, so I can write, I can save presets. And now I will click step 1 and it will save this sequence. And now we can randomize the sequencer again and find another sequence we like. Maybe this one and another one. Okay, and another one. Very nice. So we have 4 sequences. We can go back to read mode. And now when I click and hold the last step I want to have, in this case we have 4 steps, I click and hold, it will make this sequence 4 steps long. And now we will use a clock divided by 16. Let's divide the clock by 16 to trigger this 8-phase, so it will go through the presets, but also to reset the sequencer, because we have divided by 16 but only 7 steps. I want it always to start from step 1. So now we have a bit of a bass sequence that changes. Now let's do what I always do with bass voices. I add delay just to the high frequencies. So I will use Lala from Studio 6+1, which is basically a filter that I can use only the high frequencies or only the low frequencies, so I can split the frequencies more or less. So I will send a copy of this voice to Lala, and I will set a cross point here to about 1000 Hz. So from the high we will get what's above 100,000 Hz, from the low we will get what's below it, more or less again, according to the slope. And now I will use again Chronoblob. I will sync it again with the clock. Let's use a ping pong delay. For now, or in this case, I will take the wet all the way up, because we have already the original sound. I want just a wet signal here. Nice amount of feedback. Change the delay times left and right. And I will use the high frequencies with the delay, and I will send the delay to the mixer and add some sand reverb. This is channel 5. Let's take the levels here a bit up. And now I can do this. Maybe change the delay a little bit. Yes. Oh, this is smooth. It needs a sub-oscillator. So let's use Basil from Volt, which will output a beautiful, beautiful sine wave. I know it sounds funny, but Basil sounds amazing. I will use the same pitch information from the sequencer to sequence Basil, and this will go to the mixer, and let's see if we have to take it an octave down. Yes. I hope you are with headphones. If I take it out, for example, you can feel that something is missing. Nice sub-oscillator. Nice 303 sound indeed. Let's add one more thing, and this will be an atmospheric hi-hat or atmospheric hi-hats. So I have here the hi-hat module from Hora. Let's trigger it with the main clock, and I will use the delay module from VCV in this case. But let's send it already, but let's take the mix all the way down, and for now send it to the mixer and set up the sound itself. Oh, this adds movement, this is nice. Okay, tone all the way up. What's with the pitch? The pitch doesn't matter, and a bit more noisy than metallic. And now what we will do, if I'll take the mix up, and the color also up, and the feedback also, now I can do this. Yes. And I need also reverb. Maybe less volume. So now let's add walk from Bogaude, which will output smooth random modulation source. I will take the scale, let's make it quicker. You can see it's smooth and random. I will take the scale a bit down just to attenuate it a bit, and this will modulate the delay time. Very nice. Let's season this a bit. Very nice, very nice. Okay, now there's another channel here free on the mixer. If you want to experiment and add something to this, there will be a link in the description to this patch. So feel free to experiment with it. Feel free to take a closer look also if you need to watch something from up close. I use, by the way, only free available modules, so you can all download it and use it if you want. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have fun.